Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition's webinar tonight titled No Time to Waste: The Economic Crisis, the Farm Crisis, and the National Infrastructure Bank. My name is Jack Hanna. I've been a member of the coalition for 5 years, and I'm very excited to present to you tonight a wealth of individuals that will be presenting very topical developments that's occurred with regard to the bank's promotion nationally. And I'm very excited that you've joined us and what accomplishments we've made over the past several months, but particularly the last two. Our first guest that we would like to introduce is our professional macroeconomist, Alfecca Mutardi, a former senior economist with the International Monetary Fund, chief economist advisor to the coalition, and a member of the advisory board of the coalition. She's testified in numerous state legislatures and city councils. She's an expert macroeconomic assessment analysis that she's provided of the United States economy, developing regarding the development of major policy initiatives to finance unmet infrastructure needs. So, Alfecca, the floor is yours. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone. It's great to see all of you again this month. I'd like to start out with a little survey of the economy and why we need to hurry up and get busy, and there's no time to waste. We had a speaker last month that didn't particularly think that the economy was in crisis. But when you look under the hood, you see a lot of crises everywhere. And unfortunately, the Trump policies are worsening this crisis, pushing us into stagflation and maybe even a recession. So just going over them quickly one by one, we have a terrible jobs crisis, not big unemployment, but manufacturing, construction, businesses are not hiring. They're not firing, but they're not hiring either. And we're creating much fewer jobs than we were before. Even new college graduates just graduating, and those that have been unemployed for 1 year are not able to find a job. Then we have an affordability crisis. Core inflation is climbing. It's slow. The prices still don't fully reflect higher import tariffs and immigration roundups and things like that. In housing, which is in crisis, housing construction has come to a complete halt. There's no demand to buy these houses at these high prices, and high mortgage interest rates are holding things back as well. Women are leaving the workforce due to the high cost of childcare, or families are deciding not to have children because they just can't afford to do so. Homelessness is rising due to the high rents and low income and people without jobs. And then, of course, we have the budget crisis and the debt crisis. And all of that attributes back to the fact that last July 4th, Donald Trump and the Republicans passed one big beautiful budget that cuts 4 trillion in tax cuts for the rich, only partly offset by spending cuts targeted at the poor, healthcare, food, housing assistance, education. And those spending cuts are continuing even today with rescissions and that kind of thing. The budget is still adding 1 to 2 trillion in deficits every year. So far this year, it's 1.2 trillion. And a government shutdown is now very likely because the GOP wants Democratic Health to raise the debt limit, but Dems are playing hardball to make sure that they can claw back some of this Medicare spending. We have a farm crisis that Anthony Flaccavento is going to talk a little bit about. The rural America is in economic decline. There's a really good description on Wikipedia on that. Tariffs, foreign policy, especially against China, and ICE deportations are really hitting farmers hard. The budget crisis cuts spending and subsidies from the Farm Bill. We have a coming or evolving banking crisis. The stock market is in a huge bubble, out of line with the fundamental economy. The Fed has cut short-term interest rates because of the soft labor market, but high federal debt and inflation is keeping long-term interest rates very high. Banks are vulnerable to crypto and defaulting real estate. We're in a health crisis. 7 million Americans will lose their health insurance. Rural hospitals are closing. Trump is cutting regulations on chemicals and emissions that are making people sick. We've had high deaths, and then we're also in a political crisis. We have National Guard troops in cities. The Justice Department has been politicized to go after political enemies, speech limitations. All of these things are things in crisis. So what can we do about them? And this shows the urgency, of course, but a national infrastructure bank is a solution for a lot of them. It's a proven policy done during, yeah, you got to
Becca,
stop now?
if I might interrupt a moment
Yeah.
for the transition, please forgive me, but
No, that's quite all right. I know we have another speaker that needs to have a, yeah, go ahead.
all right, thank you so much. I want to introduce to you now, because of time constraints and other obligations that State Senator Rachel Ventura has, who's joining us from Illinois. Her past experience includes an actuary, naturalist, veterinarian assistant, and substitute teacher and business director. She's been on the Will County Board from 2018 to 22, and in the Senate as an advocate for affordable housing and equitable job opportunities. She is chair of the Human Rights Committee and the vice chair of Public Health in the Illinois Senate. Senator Ventura, welcome, and you have the floor. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, and thanks for fitting me in. I'm sitting in my car ready to go to another event, so I appreciate you moving me up on the agenda. And Alfalca really gave a great analogy of what's happening, not analogy, a timeline of what's been happening and the need for this. So I don't know how much more I can add, but I will give it a shot on why I'm passionate about this. I do believe that our nation is long overdue for bold infrastructure investments. And I think a national infrastructure bank would give us the tools to meet us at the moment that you just outlined. First and foremost, it is about jobs. A bank like this would create thousands of good paying jobs in construction, manufacturing, engineering, and clean energy. It would give working families opportunities to strengthen our economy, something that we really do need to continue to invest back into our middle class. As we've seen, it's been hollowed out over the last 40 to 50 years. Second, this is about stability. Instead of relying on the patchwork funding, a dedicated bank provides long-term financing for transformative projects. And so by leveraging the private investments and pension funds, we can ease the burden on state and local budgets while saving compared to the constant short-term borrowing. Third, it is about modernization. The U.S. is facing a $2.6 trillion infrastructure funding gap. The National Bank could help close that gap by financing projects that federal, state, and local governments cannot cover alone. And it would allow us to build the infrastructure that is stronger, greener, and more resilient in the face of the climate crisis and the extreme weather that we are experiencing. Importantly, this approach ensures equality. Every region, whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, would have access to financing, and it would not just be based on the state or the area's large tax bases. My district is very diverse, so this is very important to me for all of my constituents. That means modern transit, safe water systems, reliable energy grids, and broadband for every community. These are all bills that I have filed or have interest in, and so having the funding for it is crucial. This is also about security. Upgrading grids and expanding clean energy reduces our dependency on foreign resources. Stronger infrastructure keeps supply chains moving and makes us better prepared for the emergencies and natural disasters. For Illinois specifically, the need is clear. We are home to aging bridges, roads, and schools. Our public transit right now, including Metra and Amtrak, are both facing fiscal cliffs. We're expanding clean energy, but more funding is needed as we see an increase in data centers. The state is trying to move to renewable energy, but that is obviously problematic for funding. And then we have lead pipe replacement, drinking water resiliency, and in some cases moving to a different water source altogether, stormwater management, expansion of broadband, and EV charging network stations across the board. Like there is always a need for more funding. So lastly, a national infrastructure bank would give Illinois the financing tools to move these projects forward without waiting for the piecemeal federal grants. It is time to invest in our future, in great paying jobs, in building a stronger, safer, and more resilient America. And those are all the reasons that I support this, plus many more. And I'm sorry I can't say for the farm crisis because I'm in the midst of writing a farm bill that could help offset the tariffs and the economic struggles that are impacting our state, as we are the largest soybean exporter in America. And so this is really hitting our farmers hard. But thank you so much for having me here.
Wonderful work that you're doing, Senator, and it goes hand in hand with what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with your bill.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Alfecca, back to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Actually, the senator just brought up a whole lot of things that I was going to point out is the way that a national infrastructure bank is a solution to fighting all of these crises. This is a proven solution during times of crises. After the American Revolutionary War, when we nearly lost to the British again in the War of 1812, Lincoln's the Civil War, and FDR's the Great Depression. These kinds of banks really helped. It provides all of the financing that we need to cover the full financing gap as measured by the American Society of Civil Engineers. This NIB is off budget. And Stu mentioned that I should point out to people what that means. When we talk about the federal budget, of course, the government brings in revenues, mostly income taxes, and then spends out of that for war spending or Medicaid or whatever. And if it spends too much, then it runs a deficit. And then it has to raise the whole national debt. This banking concept is completely different. This is an off-budget bank that is self-sustaining. It is capitalized using treasuries from the private sector, and then it goes on to earn its own income by giving out loans. It requires no new federal spending taxes or debt. And so therefore it's passable legislation, and it helps in all the areas that the senator just talked about, creating jobs, stimulating the supply of goods, doubling economic growth, resolving supply chain problems, getting things moved around the country, including electricity, goods from ports, everything much more efficiently. It can even lend for supply bottlenecks, and it'll help with the climate and making our infrastructure more resilient. It provides a steady stream of work for small and medium businesses, and it complements any budget, the federal budget, the state budget. It's the only way to solve the debt problem. So,
could you move to the bill?
Yes,
thank you.
That's it. Well, I'm going right now, and we are very fortunate that last week we just reintroduced the National Infrastructure Bank legislation. The new bill number is HR 5356. You can look it up on congress.gov. We are coming out of the gate with a whole lot of momentum because now we already have 33 co-sponsors officially showing, but there are another 2, so that makes it 35 co-sponsors. When the House comes back into session, those names will be added to the list. And so where are we? We are right now our coalition is right now in a process of seeking even more members of Congress. And that's why we're coming to you today to ask for your help in doing that. Take your flyers and every other thing that we're going to show you at the end to go and talk to your members of Congress, talk about your unmet infrastructure needs, and then ask them to sign on to the bill so that we can really ramp up the participation for this rate. When we need the bank, where we're going to really need the bank, if we fall into a huge crisis, this will be the time, the opportune time, and everything will be set up for it. So I'll stop there. The bill number, HR 5356, and all of the new flyers and everything on our webpage refer to this new bill number. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Alfecca. Very pleased next to introduce a very special guest that we're pleased to have join us tonight. Anthony Flaccavento, apologies, is a rural development consultant from Virginia and author of Building a Healthy Economy from the Bottom Up, harnessing real-world experience for transformative change. Anthony was a Democratic candidate for Congress in Virginia's 9th District in 2018, and he co-founded the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative in 2021, a national organization. It has worked to help progressives, liberals, and Democrats understand the underlying causes of rural-urban divide and take steps to overcome it in using and employing education, media work, policy change, and local community action. Anthony, welcome, and we're pleased to have you join us tonight. And please advise us of your perspective and ideas.
Sure.
And we're so happy that you've joined us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be part of it, Jack. Thank you. And it's lovely to follow Alfeca and the Senator Ventura. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a few slides real quick that are really about an initiative that we launched with Progressive Democrats of America that is not only complementary, but kind of deeply intertwined with the National Infrastructure Bank. So 2 years ago, Rubin, the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative, and PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, wrote and published the Rural New Deal. And what I'm going to talk about very quickly is why do we need the Rural New Deal, what's in it, and how can we use it? So I'm going to start with the fact that right now we have an economy that since Ronald Reagan, at least, really has not worked for the bottom 80% of Americans. Certainly the top 1% are doing spectacularly well, but really the top 20% have done pretty well over the last 4 decades. But most of us, especially in rural communities and communities of color, have faced job loss, stagnant wages, and overwhelming economic insecurity. Just, you might be doing okay today, but you don't know if you'll have a job tomorrow. And that's because the way we've designed the economy, rather than wealth trickling down as Ronald Reagan promised, we've had a suck up economy that pulls wealth out of small businesses, family farms, Main Street businesses, all to a smaller and smaller number of bigger and bigger corporations. And this concentration of wealth, it's terrible for the entire economy, except the people at the top. It's especially bad in rural areas because rural areas are overall much less diverse economically than urban and suburban economies. So if a big player in a rural area like a Tyson Foods or a big coal mining corporation closes up shop or changes the terms with their contract producers, then the recourse that the local folks have are many fewer because of the dependence on 1 or 2 large employers. This is true in agriculture and food. It's true in the timber industry. It's true in mining of all kinds, and in small to mid-sized manufacturing like furniture, textile plants, and others. So this is why we need a Rural New Deal, and a Rural New Deal funded by a national infrastructure bank. We have had decades of underinvestment, if not disinvestment, in rural. A few quick data points. The Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis cited a study from the Kellogg Foundation that showed between 94 and 2002, and this is a pattern that goes way beyond those 8 years, the federal government spent more per capita in metropolitan areas than in rural areas every year during that period. A lot of liberals, a lot of Democrats think that we subsidize rural, that we give all this money to these ungrateful people who vote the wrong way. But in fact, on a per capita basis, we give more to rural and suburban areas than to the countryside and to rural areas. This study done in May 2025 showed that even though small businesses account for 12% in rural areas, 12% of all businesses, they receive less than 1% of venture capital. So all of this lack of investment is side by side with the fact that rural infrastructure, whether you're talking about broadband or access to clean water is much more expensive in rural areas because of issues of terrain, dispersed population. So we have less giving per capita and more cost per person. Why do we need a rural New Deal? Well, also because we are just stuck in this rut of retribution politics. This was just this morning from a liberal publication called Daily Kos, which probably some of you read, in which they just reamed out farmers who were talking about the crisis they face. This is the quote from Daily Kos, talking about farmers who were discussing the fact that they were facing bankruptcy, that they were at the absolute edge. And this liberal commentator said, you'd think they'd take their lumps. After all, the GOP is supposedly the personal responsibility party. They love to talk about the heartland, about real America pulling itself up by its bootstraps, about rugged individuality. But they sneer at the cities and demonize Black and brown Americans, all while obsessing over which bathroom someone uses. So this liberal commentator, this is a common theme, is basically saying these ungrateful people attack folks in the city. Why can't they stop whining? When a farmer pointed out that I hate to pin this request for help on the American taxpayer, but if they want us to survive, we're going to need some help. The commentator from Daily Kos said, what? Why would we want them to survive now that the pain is theirs? We're supposed to care. I don't. That kind of retribution politics, that kind of dismissal of the struggles of working people, of farmers and rural people is absolutely a huge problem. So Katrina vanden Heuvel, one of the editors in The Nation, wrote about the Rural New Deal about a year ago and said, this is what a 21st century Rural New Deal looks like. And it is, again, the product of PDA and the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative, but also of nearly 20 people working in the field, everywhere from Appalachia to the deep Southeast to the far West, all of them working on this idea of creating a platform for rural revitalization and regeneration. The Rural New Deal starts with 5 principles, and the gist of the principles is that whatever we invest, whatever we do, it should be from a bottom-up point of view. We should be investing in local communities, local businesses, local organizations' capacity to help themselves, a bottom-up approach. The Rural New Deal has 10 pillars, some of them decidedly rural, like rebuilding farm, forest, and food economies, but some of them much broader, like dismantling monopolies and supporting local businesses. Each of those pillars then has specific and very pragmatic and implementable policies and actions that, again, grow out of the experience of what we know works. In this case, with the rebuilding farm, forest, and food economies, you see everything from land banks and land trusts to revising USDA lending to be more focused on small and mid-sized producers, to instituting parity prices for grain and commodity farmers. Each of the 10 pillars then goes into some detail about how to do it. So what does this mean in practice? Well, in that first pillar, supporting regenerative farm, forest, and fishery businesses, playing that out means investing in farms, whether they're running cattle, raising hay, or produce, so that they can actually rebuild the health of their soils and sequester carbon rather than emit carbon, all while being more economically profitable. Or investing in local food systems so that consumers have access to healthy food while farmers get a larger share of the retail value of what they produce. Very similar with the second pillar of ensuring livable wages and rewarding good work by expanding on workforce development programs that actually successfully train people for new work. One example of that comes from southern West Virginia, where the Coalfield Development Corporation has launched more than 60. This is just in the last decade. They've launched more than 60 local businesses, created nearly 2,000 jobs, and the people that are working at those jobs are laid off miners, people laid off from factories, and now they're working in good jobs because of a thoughtful and expansive program of workforce training into existing local businesses. The third pillar is about dismantling monopolies and empowering local businesses. This is one of the most critical dimensions of the Rural New Deal, because if we don't return to vigorous antitrust enforcement, which the Biden administration and Lena Khan did, and the Trump administration is completely or virtually completely reneging on that commitment, then all the investment in small businesses is not enough if we don't tackle the power of monopolies by strengthening and enforcing antitrust laws, reining in private equity, and supporting workers who are displaced in the process. The other pillars include rebuilding small town centers, which is so essential and is happening in hundreds of communities, investing in rural health care, relocalizing lending, small banks, and all of that. Imagine the National Infrastructure Bank now recapitalizing small banks because they do $4 more investing in local businesses and home ownership than $4 to $1 for every investment from a Wall Street bank. So recapitalizing local banks means we're recapitalizing communities. I'm going to skip through these so we can move on to the next speaker, but I'll just say that Ruby's Rural New Deal User's Guide has everything from suggested Facebook and social media memes to letters to the editor to tweets, all of which give you some ways that you can promote this idea of targeted investment in working class and rural. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Greatly appreciate your presentation and your joining us tonight. Our next speaker is a very committed supporter of the bank for several years, a state senator from New York who graduated from Iona College in communications and Gaudet with a master's degree in the Deaf and Fordham University Law School. A judicial law secretary and taught at Hofstra in the clinical program and established a disability civil rights law firm in Brooklyn. Joanne is nationally recognized as an expert in her field, and her work was recently featured in the New York and National Law Journals. And she's also an adjunct professor at Fordham. Joanne, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we're pleased to have you make your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. I think you gave me a promotion. I'm not a senator, I'm a state assemblywoman. So
It's to come. It's to come.
but anyway, but thank you very much, Jack. I was fascinated by Mr. Flaccavento's presentation. I think it's so incredibly important that we work with our farmers and have a rural New Deal. I think it's just tremendous. So thank you very much for that. I really learned a lot, and I hope that we'll be able to learn more from you going forward. I represent a very urban area, Brooklyn. If you take the Manhattan Bridge over from Manhattan or take the Manhattan Bridge over, both of them come into my district. So transportation is a huge issue in a variety of ways, whether it's transit or also highways ringing the area. We also have a lovely Superfund site in my district. For me, how we are funding the environment and reclaiming our environment and reducing our energy costs is tremendously important. I just came from a day where we looked at many of these issues, and everybody is complaining about the cost of their gas and electric. Everybody is worried about insurance and insurability because of climate change. And so whatever it is we do to improve our infrastructure and our ability to be resilient in the face of climate change is critically important. And so for myself, that's a large reason why I've been so supportive of a national infrastructure bank, because even though it's kind of nerdy and people don't think about infrastructure, infrastructure really can make or break you. And we know that if you can't get your kids to school because the roads are in such bad condition, that is harming your children and is harming their education, and it's harming our future as a country. There are so many ways in which infrastructure plays into what it is we're doing and how it is that we are able to keep our society productive. If you're spending all your time in traffic because you can't get from here to there, you're losing money. Our economy is losing money. Housing is hugely important, and we haven't been able to invest in housing, which serves a very important public good, particularly public housing, which is we have quite a bit of in New York City. So for me, the National Infrastructure Bank really underpins so many things that matter to me. You know, as Jack mentioned, you know, I was a teacher of the deaf, so I come out of education, I come out of higher education. I've been a lawyer. I know how many people I've represented who have disabilities that are brought about because of the poor air quality, right? So all of these things really, infrastructure and the ability to improve our infrastructure underpin almost everything else we're doing in our society. So I am a big supporter of the National Infrastructure Bank. I had some conversations tonight about it with people who were leading in electrification in other states, and very interested in a National Infrastructure Bank and what it can do to help improve everybody's lives in our country, and getting us off of fossil fuels that are so degrading to our environment.
I think we're having some buffering here.
Into our health. So I've stopped there. I do think it's really important that we talk about all over the country, because we all need infrastructure and we all need to get from here to there, and we all need a place to live and be able to breathe the air. So I think that that's critically important, and I really appreciate having an opportunity to talk to folks about this. I will stop at that. Thank you very much, Jack, for your introduction. You made me
Thank you,
sound much smarter than I
Assemblywoman.
am. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Simon. Greatly appreciate your comments and your support for the bank. Next, we have another attorney who has a stellar resume, who currently serves in the North Carolina House of Representatives. He graduated from honors from the University of Georgia and honors from Duke University, and then went on to be the editor-in-chief of the Law Journal at Duke, very prestigious, along with serving and working for Covington and Burlington, a nationally recognized law firm. And a former assistant U.S. attorney. We're pleased to have Representative Philip Rubin tonight. Representative Rubin, you join us, and we thank you for attending, and we're very anxious to hear your comments.
Thanks, Jack. And I hope y'all can hear me. I'm joining you on the road from my last meeting, so hopefully this is coming through okay.
It is.
I'm really privileged to get to talk to y'all tonight, because I have gone from being sort of newly informed on the National Infrastructure Bank to being a true believer that it is both the infrastructure we need for the future and also the vision that we need for the future to give people something to have hope about. And I think a lot about hope right now, and I think a lot about disillusionment, because I think for so many people, it feels like the promise of the United States has maybe come and gone. And for so many people, it feels like there's no better future. And, you know, it's interesting to think that something that, and I agree with Assemblywoman Simon, that, you know, can seem kind of boring and technical about bridges and roads can actually be the hope, but I think it is. And the reason is, you know, I agree with the statement earlier that it underpins everything. And that doing big things is part of what has given America its self-confidence. And so at this moment, when I feel like we may have lost our self-confidence, and when our infrastructure is crumbling. We have this opportunity to bring back both at the same time. And so when I think of North Carolina in particular, I represent part of Northwest Raleigh, North Carolina, in the North Carolina House. And just north of me, there's an incredible opportunity for growth and innovation, but it's not being capitalized on because we cannot expand the roads and we cannot build the water treatment. It's just not something that our state is willing to prioritize financially right now. And that is, to me, extremely costly because it's lost opportunity. And we're sitting in a place where we have crumbling infrastructure, where we're just stagnant. And it's a state that prides itself on growth and technology, but we're not able to capitalize on that momentum because we aren't able to do these big things, and we're certainly not able to do them quickly. And we have seen road projects in North Carolina that we know we need to expand a major road, US 1, north of me, and it was supposed to be started 10 years ago, and it would have cost about $100 million. Now it'll cost $1.1 billion, and by the time they actually break ground on it, it might cost $5 billion. And so some of these things, it's not a question of can you afford to do it, it's a question of can you afford to wait. So when I think about all of this together, the National Infrastructure Bank is the answer to so many questions, right? How are we going to afford that? How are we going to prioritize this over the many things that many different states and many different parts of my state are needing? And the answer is the National Infrastructure Bank gives us that ability while, keying into a moment where I think people are looking for fiscal responsibility, and it's a solution that is fiscally responsible, but also opens up a pathway to a brighter future. So on my end, I am trying to have those conversations with federal officials that I know and I'm connected with, and on both sides of the aisle. I have talked to the staff of one of our senators, U.S. senators, I'm a Democrat, who is a Republican, and they have shown interest, right? And we'll see where that goes, but they've shown interest because I actually think this is something that should be cross-partisan, because there's really nothing about it that needs to be one side or the other. If folks are looking to drive down deficits and have American jobs, well, we got a plan for you. And like I said, I think it's a route to building hope. So I'll stop there. Happy to address anything else that would be helpful, but I'm so grateful for the work that the coalition is doing to bring this really brilliant idea forward to so many people.
Thank you, Representative Rubin. We really appreciate you taking the time, given your busy schedule, traveling, et cetera, to join us tonight. And we appreciate your comments and look forward to working with you in the future. Next, we have a state representative from Pennsylvania, my home state, Paul Tate-Cat, who was elected in 2022 in Center County, which is where State College and Penn State is located. He's experienced in local government with the Township Council and the Watershed Commission and the Regional Council there, along with the Public Safety Committee. He also brings to the legislature more than 30 years of business experience, including more than 2 decades of educational technology consulting and sales working with educators across America. Representative, you have the floor, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, it's nice to see you. Thank you all for having me. I was all prepared to talk about Pennsylvania and some of our needs, and I will certainly get to that. But Mr. Flaccavento and the previous speakers have triggered something for me, which I think is really important. Pennsylvania is in many ways incredibly unique politically in that we're the only full-time divided government in the entire country. We have a House that's controlled by Democrats by a single vote, by the way. Couldn't it be any closer? 102 to 101. We have a Senate that's controlled by Republicans, 27-23. And then, of course, we have a governor who's committed to working in a bipartisan way. But so we always have to be thinking about how do we craft bipartisan solutions. And what's really interesting is this rural-urban divide. If you look at Pennsylvania, the Democratic representation is really concentrated around Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and some of the old mining towns. But if you look in the middle, it's the red T in the middle of Pennsylvania, and it's almost uniformly Republican. And I'm one of the very few Democrats. I'm right in the middle of the state. that that has a significant rural population, and I've really leaned into that. And I do think that we have to be able to talk about why our policies are better for those communities. They've been left behind. They're suffering. In fact, they're losing population. And that's for a number of reasons: is housing and healthcare and lack of investment. Aging infrastructure. We have folks who can't afford to upgrade their water systems or their sewer or their bridges. It's just, there's hundreds of billions of dollars of need. And a lot of it is concentrated in these older communities, which have a falling population. And so, I'm actually chairing a commission that we created in Pennsylvania called the Rural Population Revitalization Commission. So I'm very interested not only in the farm policy, which, by the way, is our #1 industry. Everybody thinks, Pennsylvania, big industry, $132 billion, 600,000 jobs. I mean, it's like, that is our biggest industry. And by the way, the chair of the U.S. House Agriculture Committee is my constituent. His name is G.T. Thompson, Glenn G.T. Thompson. And frankly, he's not doing anybody any favors with this big B, whatever you want to call it, bill. It's really hurting folks. And we have to be able to engage and talk about why our solutions are better. And I really think that, once I heard about the National Infrastructure Bank and the idea of this, it really resonates because, we have to make these investments here in Pennsylvania. We recognize that we have to do something about this. So we actually created a PA Sites program. It's a $500 million bond program issuance to try and build ready sites to attract business and create jobs, particularly in rural areas, those kinds of things. I think we have really good models that will resonate in a bipartisan way. In fact, my wife and I love camping, and we always try and go to the state parks, which were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps back in the New Deal days, right? I mean, that is a model for building public infrastructure, creating forests, roads, all of that infrastructure that we still use and still enjoy. The rural electrification efforts, we've got models to be able to do things where we're building out broadband and electrical grid and building out the things, clean energy, making sure that we're trying to do an all of the above energy strategy, because frankly we're getting like big data centers, and heck, they're getting ready to restart and build nuclear power plants to just power a single data center. I mean, the need is tremendous. Disproportionately, rural and underserved communities are paying the price, and that's been alluded to this evening. I think that we really need to look outside of our comfort zone, engage with people, and one of the ways to do that is talking about investing. And one other interesting thing, and Mr. Haney, you know this better than anybody, we are a commonwealth. We are composed of 2,560 municipalities. We have 500 school districts and we have 67 counties. So there is this tradition of local control, but that's also limiting because local capacity does not allow for them to go out and do big projects. So I think some kind of a national infrastructure bank that's being mediated through an authority or some means to actually get the money out where it's going to do the most good. I'm very excited about it. Unfortunately, what I've seen so far is that it seems to be a very partisan issue. But if you look back historically, there are Republican efforts to do something similar to that. I think we need to re-engage on that. And look, if we're going to get anything done, we have to do it in a bipartisan way. We have done that in Pennsylvania. We put together rural jobs investment tax credits and agricultural innovation funding and different things, but we have to do it on a bipartisan basis. And I think this is a very exciting opportunity to maybe engage on that level. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but not exactly what I was going to talk about, but I think it's very timely given the conversation this evening.
Thank you very much, Representative Take
action.
Thank you. And It fits very well into Anthony's presentation earlier and greatly appreciated. And just want to make mention in Pennsylvania, we have the highest rate of young farmers in the country, and which fits well into our economic profile and one that the country needs to adopt going forward.
And if I might also, we also have a super high proportion of older farmers whose children do not want to take over the farm. So we're in this huge mode of transition, and what we have to do is get young people who are interested in farming but can't afford the capital to get started, because many farmers are land rich, they're resource, but they're cash poor, and young people obviously are energy rich and cash poor. So what we got to do is figure out a way to bridge that divide.
Absolutely, and that's what the Roosevelt administration did during the 1930s, and what we need to do today. Thank you so much.
Thank you all
Our
for your
next-
efforts.
Thank you. And our next guest is Bill Tallman, who's a former state senator from Albuquerque, who served many years in the Senate there, has a degree in public administration and political science. He has experience in the city management, and was vice chair of the Senate Health and Public Affairs Committee, and he previously served as a deputy city manager for the city of Santa Fe. We're very pleased to have Bill again join us tonight. He has been a very committed supporter of the bank over many years and assisted us in many endeavors to promote the bank. And Bill, thank you for coming on tonight, and the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jack, for having me on. Appreciate having this opportunity. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. Went to Syracuse University. Spent most of my career in the Midwest, having served as city manager of Hamilton, Ohio, the only city in Ohio with owns and operates a gas and electric, city manager in Moline, Illinois, the headquarters for Deere Company. So I just wanted to let people know that I haven't spent my whole life in New Mexico. So I just want to touch on four things. I want to talk a little bit about New Mexico and our infrastructure needs, a little about China. Why China? I'll explain that later. And talk about what things that I've accomplished to promote the NIB over the last 4 years, and a few closing remarks. So you all remember the Biden bill, which Biden infrastructure bill he signed November 21. Doesn't seem like it's been almost 4 years, and actually very little of that, not very much of that money's gotten out. And if you read the best-selling book Abundance, that explains why. So in New Mexico, we are in the middle of a drought, and we only got $350 million for water infrastructure. And the state engineer quit a couple of years ago because he says, I need $2 billion for water infrastructure. So he's only got 1/6 of the amount of money. I've seen high-speed rail. I've seen maps where they project that the first high-speed rail west of the Mississippi would go through New Mexico, basically following the old Route 66. We got zero money in New Mexico for high-speed rail. Electric transmission, we got zero amount of money. We have the second sunniest state, the fifth windiest state. We produce a lot of renewable energy, most of which is going to California. And broadband, we have 20% of our residents don't have broadband because either they can't afford it or it's not accessible. We only got literally 1/20th of the amount of money we need to provide everybody with broadband. We need $2 billion. We only got 100 million. It just goes on and on and on. Obviously, the Biden bill fell far short of the need. It was only $1 trillion. And we need the latest estimate from the Civil Engineers Society is we need $9 trillion. So a little bit about China. Why China? Well, why China? Because they can serve as, I think, as a motivation for us to get our act together. They're kicking our butt on infrastructure. I've been to China twice. It'll blow you away. The infrastructure there, they've got 28,000 miles of high-speed rail. We got 0. Europe's got 15,000 miles of high-speed rail. And China, some of you may be familiar with China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's not getting much publicity, but it's unbelievable. It's a project aimed at improving trade and communications in they've spent money in 130 countries in Africa, Eastern Europe, and some of the former Soviet republics in Latin America. And they're building airports and ports, power plants, bridges, railways, roads, telecommunication networks. So, why do I mention this? Well, unless the United States turns toward increasing and improving its relationship with the rest of the world and improving and upgrading its own infrastructure, China is on a fast track to be the dominant country in the world, and we're just falling behind. And it's sad, it's tragic, it's just not enough people realize that we're in decline and we're falling way behind the rest of the world. It's just so unfortunate. And people, I found, having done a lot of door-to-door, that most people, even in upper income districts, are just totally uninformed and they're misinformed. China now produces more than 60% of the world's EVs. I was the first state senator 7 years ago to buy a total electric vehicle. I love the car, would never change. China produces 80% of the batteries. It wasn't that long ago that China sought out the United States for infrastructure. Now it's just the opposite. Yesterday's UN meeting, I'm sure most of you heard about Trump's performance, which was, to say the least, was terrible. But China agreed to cut emissions by 10% over the next decade, while at the same time, the United States is going backwards. We're doubling down on fossil fuels. China is now in the forefront of technology. And as I said, I've been to China, and the infrastructure will blow you away. And let me move on to what I've done over the last 4 years. We only have 3 Congress persons in New Mexico. I was able to successfully persuade them 2 of them to sign on to the previous infrastructure bill, and I played a role in getting the 3rd one to sign on. I've attended literally dozens of these national Zoom meetings. I introduced a resolution in the New Mexico Senate to promote and to encourage and urge Congress to pass NIB. And I've authored 3 op-eds in the largest newspaper in New Mexico, one of which had 20 co-sponsors. There's never been an op-ed in the Albuquerque Journal that had as many as 20 co-sponsors. And last year at the National Council of State Legislatures, I sponsored a resolution regarding the importance and impact of the National Infrastructure Bank. And just a few final thoughts. There is, it's really, I'd like to urge everyone on this call to urge their congresspersons to sign on to this bill. It's not easy. It's hard work, but obviously it's so important and needs to be done. So we, and there's a good chance that our economy is going into a recession or depression. The NIB can boost the economy like nothing else. As has already been mentioned several times, infrastructure underpins everything. And I would urge everyone to, again, call their congressman. This is so important. And And China, why do they keep mentioning China? Because they should serve as a motivation. My God, they're so far ahead of us, and every day we're going backwards and they're going forwards, and they're gonna dominate the world. So also, if we don't implement, and you can't implement economic development without a strong and viable infrastructure. So again, please call your congressman. This is so important, and because otherwise we're just going to continue to fall behind. Thanks, Jack. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you, Senator, and we greatly appreciate your comments. We're going to go to the question and answer period next. However, before we do that, and we really want it to be more a discussion and dialogue as opposed to question and answers, but we have a few people that we want to provide an opportunity to also speak just briefly. And the first is going to be Randy Voller from North Carolina. Randy, thank you for joining us tonight, and we're pleased always to hear your comments.
Well, pleased to be continuing to work with NIB. I guess the update I give everyone is there was the Democratic Municipal Officials Convention in Durham last week, and our folks were present. We were there and meeting with mayors and elected officials from around the country. Stuart and Angela did an amazing job in their 2 days there. We were able to get a personal invite to the mayor of Durham's restaurant, which unfortunately I had to go back to Pittsburgh, but hopefully Angela and Stuart took advantage of it. But it seems like from meeting officials, talking to them, spending time with the president of the organization, who is the mayor of Glendale in Wisconsin, they liked the idea. We had a bunch of supporters there in the room that were with the DNC that helped pass the resolution in Minneapolis. And of course, DNC Chair Ken Martin addressed the group, and he was happy to see Stuart and Angela because they seemed to be everywhere. We had them in Minneapolis, and then a couple of weeks later, we had them in Durham. And then earlier this summer, we had them at a National Association of Realtors convention I got them into. So we're going everywhere we can. Some places are bipartisan, like the National Association of County Commissioners, which we got a resolution there, and others are partisan. But I can tell you assuredly that every day we're doing phone calls, trying to talk to officials, educate them, and we're getting to events, and we're slowly but surely, I think, making progress. And what we all need to do is ensure that our local congressional member is signed on. Now, some of us might live in a red district, that might be a little harder, but those of us in a blue district need to contact our congressional member and get them on the bill. I will tap out there, Jack.
Thank you, Randy. And I'm going to go back just for a moment to Assemblywoman Simon, who has accomplished a great task as far as the new legislation for the bank that we just had submitted last week. Assemblywoman Simon, please describe your accomplishment.
Well, I called a lot of people. You know, we had 10 New York representatives on the bill last time, and we were able to get 9 of them to sign on as original sponsors this time out, which was terrific. They all responded right away. Were willing to do that. They were all very committed to this. And so it was an easy lift. It was just a matter of me reaching back out to people. You know, I'm continuing to talk to other members as well, because we don't have every single person. But we have about a third of a little bit more than a third of the New York State congressional delegation on this bill.
Thank you very much, Joanne. It is that we've accomplished over the past just 2 months. First of all, in July, we attended the National Convention of County Commissioners in Philadelphia, where they had several thousand attendees. And as you can imagine, most of them are Republicans. And we put forth and proffered a resolution in support of the bank. We got a great deal of support and had the resolution passed with a lot of advocacy from both sides of the aisle, which reflects the common sense and the validity of what this bill actually means. Next, we went to the DNC's meeting the last week in August, and again put forth and proffered a resolution in support of the bank, which passed. And I would suggest of the three resolutions that were focused on the economy, I think ours spoke most to the path by which we need to go in order to successfully lead our country into the 21st century and having a first-rate infrastructure that accomplishes that. Finally, well, not finally, but last week, the Democratic municipal officers had their national convention in Durham that Randy was mentioning and referring to earlier, and that went very well. We had many contacts. It was well received. Talked to many mayors and others, municipal officers, and got a great deal of support. Finally, this coming weekend, the Congressional Black Caucus is meeting, and again, we are going there. We are soliciting support across the board with all the different constituencies. This is building momentum. We have the bill out now. We need everyone's support and efforts to push this forward. We're on a roll, but you can't stop now. We have to keep this up. I'm now going to go to questions and answers. And I'm sorry I didn't see who went first, but I'm going to go Joe with you first. Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you. Another great presentation or series of presentations. Really enjoyed it. I'm from several monetary reform groups, and we're cousins. And this is really a kind of an ends and means situation. I think we're all looking for the same end, which is to have the power of money creation used for the public good, to meet the highest priority uses of our resources. And I'm really thrilled that the Public Banking Institute and your group have had so much success in spreading the word, and you've got precedents to demonstrate to the politicians that this is a proven way of getting that done. Monetary reform also has some precedents, of course, Lincoln being number one, colonial money. But there are other precedents, and I have a link that if you open up the chat, I'll put it in. It's from Josh Ryan Collins. It was written a few years ago, not too many, 7 or 8. And he lists 4 case studies as to how money can be used for the public good. And 2 of those case studies, and I think this is why I'm mentioning it, 2 of those case studies are infrastructure banks, both the American and the Canadian. The other 2 are the use of the central bank to ensure, not unlike QE actually, only more sensibly, and more, doing more. It was designed specifically in both cases to do to meet public needs. So if you give me a chance, I'll put that in the chat. I think it's a good resource. It's more precedent that you can refer to, particularly the Canadian version, because I know that you're obviously experts in the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which is one of his case studies. Thanks for all you're doing. I would just love it if I'd be perfectly happy if your 2 organizations, your twin organizations, had all the success, and we did not. We're all in for the same end, and the means are very, very similar. Magicians have several ways of performing the same illusion, the same outcome, and maybe your way is one that has the best chance of getting things done. So best luck to you from our monetary reform organizations. And right now we're having an American Monetary Institute conference, but I know there's not enough time in the day for you folks to do to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish right now in terms of an infrastructure bank. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And we're in the process of pulling a rabbit out of our hat. And next, we're going to go to Randy again. My apologies earlier. And your question, please.
Well, not a question, but I did think of a couple of things that have been going on here that you were probably referring to. The big thing is that Adam Smith, who is pretty moderate, is now a original co-sponsor to the bill, and I believe Pramila Jayapal has decided to support it from the beginning as well. We've got a couple of others that we're working on. Trying to think of who recently has done a formal announcement of support. There's so many that it's hard to remember, but we're getting some inroads in Oregon now. So, and of course that's because of the national effort. I'm just tagging along.
Thank you, Randy, and you're absolutely right. Next, I see a hand up from Robert Cesario. Robert, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jack. I just wanted to chime in to let you guys know something. Some of you are well aware of this, and that is having to do with the Rural New Deal and the National Infrastructure Bank. We had meetings with our resolutions committee for the Missouri Democratic Party leading into our June 2024 state convention. And at that convention, we passed resolutions endorsing both. So I just wanted you to know. I mean, and I know we talked a lot with Representative Cleaver. I think he may have signed on to the past one. I'm not sure if he did. I'd be interested in knowing if you've gotten him on the current iteration.
He's on, Robert.
Wonderful.
Great.
That's pretty much all I had to say. It was fun working with Anthony and Alan and preparing those propositions for the Missouri Democratic Party.
Thank you, Robert, and greatly value your support. Next, we're going to move on to Craig Schwartz. Craig, your question or comment?
Oh, just two quick comments. The Guardians are up 3-1, and it's the top of the seventh over Detroit. The other thing, I gave a speech in Ravenna, Ohio, last week, and on public banking. So I'll give the history, obviously, of the national examples 4 times, like we always do. I go on about state public banking, all this. But one thing that I'm finding is generally people have forgotten their history. We're always in like an education mode, and especially when I give a speech, and I know our other speakers have found this to be the case. We have to do a really when we talk about rural Ohio, rural America in general, but I could speak about rural Ohio as a former rural caucus chair, and I was hoping Chris Gibbs was going to get out of the new chairs, but anywho. It is reminding people, our audience, about the possibilities of public banking. It's as if we're coming in from a foreign country. A lot of times they've never heard of this before, and when we get through the presentation and get through the talks or whatever, it wows them over every time. So we just gotta be able to get get this message out more and more. And I'm doing my part in Ohio, and that was it. Just want to give you an update on the that and about the game. But we just got to keep doing our part, showing up when we can in these little town halls, in our meetings. And I know the state reps and the state legislators are doing their bit, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. We have 2 elected officials joining us tonight, but before we get to them, we're going to have Walt McCray give his statement or question and then proceed. Thank you, Walt.
Well, thanks, Jack, and hi, everybody. Wonderful to be here again, and really nice to hear the shout outs for the whole concept of public banks. That's what the National Infrastructure Bank is, of course, and public banking being, I think, a paradigm shift in the way Americans think about their democracy, who's controlling it, who's running it. I thought you would enjoy or at least appreciate a little data point from the Federal Reserve about how much money the public has given in the last 30 years into the major banks as depository money. And now that's actually a loan to these banks, which of course we use in a depository relationship. But $35 trillion have been put from the public purse, from our tax dollars, deposited into these big banks. Now, we borrowed it back and so forth at considerable expense. But the illustration here is that if that money had been put in our own public banks, that money could have been magnified numerous times to handle the issues that so many people have mentioned tonight about the rural gap, the urban needs, et cetera, et cetera. All of that could be approached in a much more fluid, democratic sort of a way. Small d, of course. So it's kind of a shocking figure, and I thought you guys would appreciate hearing that. I will just also add that as I believe it was Joe Polito talked about the AMI conference, that's a really wonderful gathering of conversation about our money. And it's available for you. It's free to participate, but some really great speakers there. So I would encourage you to the American Monetary Institute, go to their website and you can register and attend some of their sessions that are going on for the next week and a half. Very, very good thing. But what's illustrated here for me is that the time we live in, with what's going on and the powers shifting so intensely to big money interests, to the consolidation of power, which of course means that public policy is underfunded. And of course, public policy has been pretty much undermined by big money anyway. The people don't have much power in realizing public policy shifts. But my point is unity. We really need to unify around the idea and around the concept, around the opportunity that we can have our own banks. Banks for infrastructure, banks for rural and urban needs, and for cities, for education, for all of the stuff that the people have. But the people need to get their hands on their own banks. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Walt. We're going to have Anthony Flaccavento again speak in a moment, but before we do, we have a state representative joining us from North Carolina, Renee Price. And Renee, we're pleased and happy and appreciative for you to join us tonight, and we'd like to hear your comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and greetings to everyone. I just do want to reinforce what my colleague Phil Rubin had said, but also to add to that, before I was a state rep here in North Carolina, I was a county commissioner for 10 years, and Randy Voller and I were on a regional transportation board. Actually, there's several, and the point I want to make is that in North Carolina, just the system for trying to build infrastructure is so fractured. I mean, we had to go through all these different steps and vie for money. And then, of course, we had a shutdown where there was no money. But, it's very fractured. And so that's why it's so hard to get anything done. And in some ways, it's almost like a lottery system. So, some areas, for example, where we were on the board that we worked on, which was rural, everyone tried to work together and to get along and make sure that, each municipality or county got a piece of the pie. But then I was on another one, which was more urban. Well, it was urban because it included Durham. And there was some strife just trying to deal with weighted votes and whatnot, and it got rather contentious. And I think something like this bank that you're talking about would cut through all of that and just negate it altogether, which is what we need. My question, well, let me just say my background was city and regional planning. And so infrastructure is very, very fascinating for me, whether you're talking transportation or housing or what have you. And I'm from New York. I'm actually from Rochester, New York, and I did work in the state assembly with one of your former colleagues, David Gant. a long, long time ago. So I do have a passion for this, but my question is this, because I'm not an economist, and perhaps we can leave this for another session, but my question is, how does it work? You mentioned the private investors, and just I think would be helpful in very basic terms to be able to explain how the bank will actually work. I mean, the benefits are there. It's pretty obvious, but I think where a lot of people get hung up is how it actually works.
Representative Price, we're going to have our economist, Alfecca Mutardi, uh, uh, respond to your question. Alfecca.
Great. Thank you very much. We have a whole set of slides, which we usually don't have time for on this Zoom call, on how the NIB works. But suffice it to say that this NIB is a mixed ownership public bank, partly privately owned, partly publicly owned. And it operates on its own steam, so it does not need money from the federal government. The way that it works is it takes treasuries that the private sector owns and then swaps them for preferred stock to capitalize the bank. And then once it's capitalized, it gives out a loan just like any commercial bank, takes in deposits, actually creates money each time it gives out a loan, and then creates the money supply and then directs those loans to infrastructure so that they don't get lost in budget fights, budget cuts, all these things that you're talking about, contentious, trying to get funding. What we really, really want not only is better financing for this big unfunded gap of infrastructure we have to cover, but we want better planning as well. So we would love for communities to sit down and do their wish list of projects and then stack them all up, county by county, connection by connection. And then when they come into the NIB, we have a concrete transportation plan or electricity plan that we can roll out and finance effectively. That's one of the Canada does this, and one of the objectives of the bank as well.
Thank you, Representative Price and Alfecca. And we're going to wrap things up tonight with a final comment from Anthony. Again, we're so appreciative of you joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts and ideas that fit perfectly with our approach, in my opinion, as far as a national infrastructure bank is concerned and rural economic policies. Anthony.
Thanks, Jack. I'm very grateful to get another shot. I feel a little bit of pressure to have the final word. I feel like the cleanup hitter in the bottom of the ninth. But anyway, great session. I'm so excited about the bank. I'm going to give an example, a sort of a different kind of infrastructure. Usually when we think of infrastructure, we think of roads and bridges, high-speed rail, water systems, all of which are critical in rural and urban settings, no doubt about it. There's another kind of infrastructure which I call value-adding infrastructure. So I'm in southwestern Virginia, the part of Virginia that's sandwiched between West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, very much the Appalachian heart. And 25 years ago, we started talking with tobacco farmers because the federal tobacco program was coming to an end. And a lot of these farmers were desperate trying to figure out what to do to keep their farm going. So we had a notion that these farmers could use pretty much the same skill set they had with a few changes and pretty much the same equipment and land base they had to raise organic produce, free-range eggs, and everything else. And they were excited about it. The problem was none of them were a big enough scale to reach the kinds of markets they needed to make a living. And so what we did, starting literally in an old tobacco barn where they hung tobacco, was we built a packing house that then grew into a full-blown facility that allows hundreds of farmers, small to mid-sized farmers, to raise their product, get it to a place where it gets graded and processed, and then goes into good paying large markets like supermarkets and universities. This is an example of two things to me that is why the NIB is so important. One, a lot of times what infrastructure investment does is it allows small businesses, family farms to compete with the big boys who dominate everything by creating essentially places where they can consolidate their product. So it makes small businesses more competitive. And the second thing it does is it cuts through the horrible political divide we have now, because I can tell you that most of those tobacco farmers who signed on to our Appalachian Harvest packing facility and food hub were not flaming liberals, but they were thrilled by the prospect of working together to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. I think that that's what the Rural New Deal and the National Infrastructure Bank would make much more commonplace, is that very thing. So I share that story as a little successful example, and I know we would have many, many more if we can get this thing passed.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And I'm going to correct myself. There's one or two other people we're going to have to speak just before we wrap things up. Randy Voller has one more comment to make. And Randy, go ahead and speak your piece. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Actually, what I want to do is tell people a story of hope, because my good friend Renee Price, who I worked with for years, was talking about the rural planning organizations, which are in every state. And they work with the metropolitan planning organizations to the best extent they have, and the Federal Transit Administration. And she's right. It's all divided up, very hard to get the funding. You recommend upward, and there's never enough. Now, my point of hope here is, when I was just a young, wet behind the ears mayor and had no idea what I got myself into, like everyone who's elected or served on boards on this call, you go to a meeting because once you're elected, you get on 100 committees. They want to put you on everything, and usually the ones nobody else wants. I go to this meeting with Orange, Chatham, Lee, and Moore County, where Pinehurst is, where UNC, much bigger places than my little community. And it's run by county commissioners, which is fine. I'm elected to be the vice chair. In the next meeting, the woman that wanted me to be the vice chair had an affair with the county manager, and she had to resign. And I showed up thinking I'm going to be a vice chair on a committee for a year, have all the time in the world to learn. And I got what they call a field promotion because my boss died in the line of duty. Not literally, but her career died. I tell you this because we are kind of bumping up against it, right? Working really hard, and you never know what weird little break will happen. And after that happened for me, this committee was mostly Republicans, because Moore County is a red county, Lee County is mostly a red county, but they made me their chair for 8 straight years because I figured out how to work with them in a bipartisan manner and get their transportation issues done and approved. And the way I did it was by saying, I'm going to sublimate my communities to yours, but then you're going to support my community with DOT, so we're not fighting. And by not fighting, all of our projects went to the top of the list. And I can point out, Congressman Etheridge helped us get a big one built. A bunch of them are still in line today. And I say this to you guys because it seems like we're at the darkest of times, but I'm telling you that all it takes is one little weird thing to happen, and suddenly this thing gets passed. And I'm only telling you one story from my career because it's kind of funny how I thought I would just be a perpetual vice chair, and my boss has an affair with the county manager, and next thing I know, I have to chair the committee. Now Renee wasn't there when that happened. By the time Renee got on that committee, it was just all smooth sailing, and I was just handing it off to the next person. That was before her time.
But then I got it.
Yes, you got to be the chair. So guys, that's why we need all of you just to make the one phone call or 2 phone calls to our congressional members. Renee and I are going to keep pressing Valerie Fouché. We know Valerie can get on this. We just ask you to do that in your community, and let's just make this thing a continual presence, because I'm telling you, you never know what will happen, and all of a sudden it can get promoted.
Well,
I'll
Randy,
tap out there.
Randy, just want to say I wish we had that kind of political leadership in Washington at this point in time, because we don't. All right, everyone. We're ready to wrap things up, but there's very important information I wish to share with you before we go. And one is this is the most important task that you can perform as far as the National Infrastructure Bank is concerned. But before I get to that, I want to talk more about the momentum that we've built with regard to support of the bank in describing the National Association of County Commissioners resolution, the DNC resolution, our participation in the Democratic Municipal Officers Convention and the Black Caucus this weekend. The Bond Buyer is a economic publication that is nationally recognized. They printed an article, as you can see, September 22nd, that focuses on our legislation that we are sponsoring and gives a very positive review of it. Again, it's supported us in the past. We have a buzz going on, and we have to keep this up. And once you got that momentum going, don't lose it. And we should not lose it now, because we're getting attention, and we need to obtain more supporters and co-sponsors for our legislation to keep that momentum going. So what can you do? Contact your congressional representative and advocate for the bill. We have resources and information to share with you, which we will do so after this meeting tonight, by tomorrow, to provide you with a letter to Congress that supports the legislation, updates them. Please perform this kind of task. This is what makes the difference as far as our getting more support is concerned, and eventually gets us closer to accomplishing our goal of having the bank come into existence. So also, the other thing that we really need is financial support. You can only imagine, we are a very small organization. We don't get money from private industry, from consultants. It's just us. And we have had people go to Philadelphia, Angela and Stu, to support the bank as far as the county commissioners convention is concerned. The DNC in Minnesota, they were there. Durham, North Carolina, this past weekend for the municipal officers convention, they were there. This weekend, they're going to the Congressional Black Caucus meeting again to solicit support. This costs money. We really need your help at this point in time. It was a big hit and expense, and it's been productive. And if we want to have the bank be successful, we have to participate in these kind of events. We want to have, I ask you jointly, we need at least $1,000 that we would ask of you tonight to contribute to the support of the bank and all of our efforts. And please be as generous as you can. We're on the cusp, and we just need to continue pushing to get it over the edge. We're getting attention nationally, and that's the key. So please be generous with your support. With that, I have no other comments to make except go to our website, our Facebook, email us. The bank is the key to our financial success as a country, domestically and internationally going forward. And thank you all for joining us tonight. I thought it was a great presentation with representation from all over the country. So we're building momentum, and thank you so much.